Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go! Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go! Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go Toronto, go! Go Argos, go, go, go!
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 8 of the Argo Bounce live audio show with Chris Pomay and Nick Small here on this Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. And we're looking forward to our guest tonight, Don Landry, the former 590 in Toronto radio personality. He's also the former PA announcer for the Toronto Argonauts, and he's also currently the CFL.ca writer as well. So looking forward to having Don on as a special guest tonight, and my co-host Nick as well. I'm just going to bring on Nick first. Nick, good evening. How are you?
Howdy, Chris. I'm doing great. We came off out of the hammer in an epic fashion, a spectacular win. It's pretty crazy now, given how long we have struggled to win in Hamilton on Labor Day, and without getting any since they built the new stadium until last year. And now we've got 2 Labor Day wins back to back. The Harold Ballard Trophy is coming back to Toronto again. So it's quite a spectacular way to go. And not to mention the fact that we're now 9-1. We're in a huge lead for first place in the division, and we are in a very good shape against Montreal this Friday, which is coming up really soon.
I've got to ask Don. I'm going to bring Don on in 20 seconds, but I got to ask him, when's the last time the Argonauts started 9-1, and when's the last time they won back-to-back Labor Day games in Hamilton? Because even back in the 70s and 80s, they did not fare well there. So this team right now is playing well, and what I'm going to do right now, Nick, is bring on our guest, Don Landry. Good evening, Don. How you doing? Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm doing good, Chris. How you doing? How you doing, Nick?
Good.
Hey, Don, pleasure to meet you. Given the fact that as a kid, I've watched so many games at the Sky Dome in the late 2000s and the early 2010s, it's really cool to have you on and getting to hear the voice behind the scenes, the man in the sky, as we were listening to so many games as kids back, my brother and I, back in the day.
Well, it's really a pleasure to meet you too, Nick. I mean, obviously, any big fan of the CFL is a friend of mine, and if that CFL fan is a curling fan, oh, you're in like Flint with me, buddy.
Great to hear. I live and breathe curling when I'm not in the football season. I plug into my workplace. I work for the largest curling company and greatest curling company in Canada, Goldline. So shout out to them, and really glad to meet another big curling fan as well.
Well, Don, I was going to say thank you so much for coming on here today. And I wanted to ask you, Don, just quick thoughts on this weekend's games and obviously the Argos' impressive 41-28 win over the Tiger Cats yesterday.
Yeah, I guess we should start there. And I heard you mention that, it's a tough place for the Argonauts to win, even at the best of times. Guys, my memory is that even when the Argos were having a great season, they could go into Hamilton and weird things might happen, even if the Ticats were kind of ordinary in that same season. And if the Ticats are good, never mind. It just wasn't going to happen for the Argonauts. Iverwin was a terrible place for them to play on Labor Day, and it's not that they couldn't get things done against the Ticats on other dates and in the playoffs at Iverwin. They did that, or at Old Exhibition Stadium and then on to the Sky Dome. But something about that Labor Day game for Hamilton. I mean, my theory has always been that I think the Ticats and their supporters have just a bit more of, I hate to use the word hatred, but a dislike for Toronto and the Argos, and maybe flows the other way. And so when they have home field on that day, they feel we have to win this game. I think that plays into why weird things can happen to good Argos teams on Labor Day. And certainly it's part of the reason why poorer Argo teams were not going to fare well at all in Hamilton on Labor Day.
Nick, go ahead with your thoughts.
Yeah, I have to agree with that a lot, Don. Chris, you were the one, I think yourself, who brought it on that it was known as Never Win Stadium for such a long time back at Old Ivor Wynn, with how rough the Argos seem to have it. And I think it says a lot about that rivalry and the identity of these two teams, where it's such a momentous day in Hamilton on that Labor Day game, when no matter what happens, the sort of expectations that the Tiger Cats are going to come out claws drawn, guns blazing, ready to try to take down the Argonauts. And as we've seen more often or not, they have accomplished that. So I think then as the Argos, it makes it huge for us that we've been able to come into their city and win back to back. And especially with this year being so significant with them hosting the Grey Cup again. And I know at the start of the year, kind of like last time Hamilton hosted during COVID, the Ticats played well enough to be in the Grey Cup at their home city, and unfortunately didn't get the result they wanted. It's kind of now the other way, where your arch rivals are now potentially coming into your city to play that big game. It's a challenge for them to try to come out and make a season out of it by beating your arch rival.
Nick, I was going to ask you as well. Obviously, they set an attendance record of 25,211, which is great for Tim Hortons Field. Well, how many Argo fans do you feel there were there besides yourself at that game approximately?
I think there was a pretty good turnout of Argos fans. It is obviously way more Hamilton fans, but I gotta think at least a couple thousand were probably on the road there. Maybe I might be a bit of a stretch saying 1 in 4 and 1 in 5, but there, especially where we were, because we were behind the Argos bench, there was a good contingent of Argos fans. But guys were plastered all over the field, and you could find at least a couple Blues among the black and gold in the majority of seats.
Don, I wanted to ask you this. Obviously, last week, the Argos made the announcement they're signing Chad Kelly to a 3-year deal with approximately $1.8 million. Don, thoughts on Chad Kelly, and did you think that he would be as good as he has been this season?
I didn't know. I shouldn't say I didn't think. I wasn't sure how high he could go, where his ceiling was. And I was uncertain as to whether he could get to that ceiling that everybody told us he had. I mean, we'd heard consistently, even though we didn't see him play much last season, that he had a cannon arm, that he had all the skill in the world, that he can't miss, that he would be able to light things up in the Canadian Football League. And I kept thinking about, what kept him from, hanging on to his job in the NFL, and the troubles that he had attitude-wise, and the troubles that he ran into, with the law when he was in the NFL, that sort of thing. I didn't know what we had. And to be honest with you, after he played so well in relief of McLeod Bethel Thompson in the Grey Cup game last year, I still wondered, not because of how he played, because he was sensational in that game. It wasn't just that 20-yard run that he had at a key moment. He made good decisions and made good passes. He looked good. But when we went down to the Argo dressing room and got him to come out for an interview, he walked out of the dressing room and he was doing kind of the Johnny Manziel, dollar thing with his hands over his head and yelling, "The price just went up. The price just went up." And I went, oh boy, I mean, is it just about him? So I went into this offseason going, okay, if they don't have McLeod Bethel Thompson back, I guess we'll see about Chad Kelly, but I don't know. But I mean, then I got to talk to him in March, guys, for an article for CFL.ca, and I was like, is this the same guy? Because he was so altogether a team guy, humble, working hard. He had moved to Toronto for the winter. He was throwing with some of his teammates. He was into the facility every chance he could get. And then he started this season and it just continued on. And I've just been impressed from day one, mildly surprised. Again, I want to reiterate, it wasn't that I didn't think he could ever be a really great quarterback in the Canadian Football League. I just wasn't sure it was going to happen, but he very quickly removed all doubt. And from what I hear, I mean, the Argos were thinking about trying to get his name on a long-term contract as early as week 2 of this year, because they'd seen enough in training camp and in the early regular season that this guy was the real deal, that his attitude was in the right place, and that he loved being in Toronto. It's an amazing story.
Absolutely, Don. And what I wanted to ask you is the long-term stability of this franchise looks good with Pinball Clements, Ryan Dinwiddie, and the coaching staff. How much does it mean to this franchise to have possibly a franchise quarterback
Well, it's always huge.
around in the city for another 3 years, hopefully?
It's always, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Your audio dropped out for me. I thought you were done, but it's huge for them, of course. Every football team wants that guy who can be the general on the field. And when you get a guy who has become, personality, who brings personality plus with it, and a deep appreciation for the team he's playing for, the city he's living in, the history of that football team, and just seems to be a complete and utter team guy and ready, willing, and able to do anything that's asked of him when it comes to being the marketing face of the team. It's just a massive thing. I mean, he's just bringing everything right now for the Argos on the field and off the field. I think the short answer to your question is it's pretty huge.
Nick, did you want to ask Don a question?
Yeah, I was going to add into that I think you really saw it during the game this weekend. He truly got fired up by that rivalry. There was moments in there where, especially near the end of the game, where it kind of got a little messy, though. You did see him, though, looking at the fans, getting support. At the end, they were actually all joking, saying that this sounds like BMO, because all the Toronto fans that were left were cheering and all in really high spirits. And Chad Kelly was right in that, getting us Argo fans who were in there pumped up. He's always into it and very supportive and with this team. And I think that's where you really saw a lot of the excitement with the extension and the loyalty he has to this team, where there was so many talks about him potentially wandering off to an NFL team after such performance already this year. You see that there's probably some more long-term commitment staying in Toronto, which is a fantastic thing.
Don, I wanted to ask you this. Even though he signed a contract with the Argonauts, is there always an out clause for Chad if he wants to try the NFL again?
Oh, sure. I imagine there has to be now, whether it's written in the contract or not. I don't think that part matters. CFL teams almost never stand in the way of guys who have a great season and then get decent opportunities to go down south and try the National Football League. So I would say, again, if it's not written in the contract, I can't see an organization like the Argos, Pinball Clemens saying, no, you're not going anywhere. Having said that, it just depends on, what we're hearing about reports of this contract and how much money he would give up if he did want to try the NFL, like, a sizable offseason signing bonus. If that's true, then he has to really get a tremendous opportunity from a National Football League team. And I think perhaps Chad Kelly will have looked at the experience of Nathan Rourke this year and could surmise that, boy, you can be lights out here and lights out in preseason in the NFL, and you're still going to get waived and maybe put on the practice roster. I don't know that Chad Kelly, I don't know the man, I'm just supposing here, but it's just possible that he looked at a situation like that and goes, yeah, I don't think I need the opportunity to go bust my butt in training camp and then just get waived and maybe end up on another team or on a practice roster and have no chance to play. So that's something the Argos have going for them. It sounds like they structured the contract in an intelligent way, that one that is good and incentive laden for Chad Kelly to go, I won't take just any deal to prove I can play in the NFL. I got to have a good one. And if he doesn't, then he plays out his contract with the Argos, and then the Toronto team will be much the richer for that.
I have to agree. You look at also his age too. It's not like he's Nathan Rourke, who's 25 and has some years left to try in the NFL. 29. Do you really want to spend another year or two in an NFL camp, being at best case a second or third string guy? If you don't get that opportunity to be a starting QB, do you really want to just be a practice quarterback going into your 30s and then potentially not playing in any big game ever? Or would you rather be in the CFL where you're playing all these exciting, meaningful games, you're putting up tremendous amounts of yardage and becoming a hero in Toronto? I think if I'm in his position, I'd probably want to do the same thing too. I'd rather be playing football than sitting.
One thing, Don, I wanted to ask you, how beneficial, how good was it for Kelly to basically sit last year behind McLeod Bethel Thompson and learn from him as well?
I think it was pretty big. Again, going back to me, talking to him in March and writing that article for CFL.ca, he talked about McLeod Bethel Thompson and how much his veteran leadership meant to him. I think Chad Kelly learned an awful lot from McLeod Bethel Thompson, not just in what to do on the football field and how to prepare as a quarterback. I think that was part of it. But I think McLeod Bethel Thompson, the man, really had an effect on Chad Kelly as well. And, aside from the things that he had to do to be a good quarterback on the field, McLeod Bethel Thompson became a supreme leader with the Toronto Argonauts. He really did. I mean, especially in that final year last year. And probably, if I'm fair, in the second half of the season before that, maybe in the stretch drive, there seemed to be a change in McLeod Bethel Thompson's personality where almost either he challenged himself or somebody in the organization said, you must be the leader. You must, and not just with your play, and you need to be, a vociferous leader. And he became that. And I think Chad Kelly learned from that and just learned about, don't you guys think McLeod Bethel Thompson's personality, I mean, he can be fiery at times, but mostly he's pretty chill, and he's a California guy, and just taking account of his blessings in his life, and just even keeled, right? All of those things maybe Chad Kelly needed in his life.
Yeah,
absolutely. Don, what I wanted to ask you is, I see similarities to Chad and his uncle Jim Kelly. Obviously, Chad's got more mobility and athletic ability than Jim, but Jim Kelly and Chad, when they throw bad passes or interceptions, seem to both have that ability to brush it off and not be afraid to go deep again. I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. Jim Kelly did seem to just always want to just throw the ball downfield. Some quarterbacks, it will affect them a little bit. And that can be okay, except for maybe not on the ensuing drive or two. It might settle them down a little bit in the long run, but yeah, they might be a little bit nervous and wanting to hand off or throwing just short stuff. But he's just so confident in his long ball abilities and his abilities to make throws into tight windows, and like his uncle, big strong arms. So yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities there. Maybe he got that from, well, partly it's just the blessing of your physical attributes. Maybe he also got it from watching Uncle Jim and talking to him as well, and just in getting that kind of an attitude instilled in him.
Absolutely. And now, Don, I don't want you to compare the 90. What I wanted to ask you, Don, I'll rephrase that. Do you see any similarities between this team and the 1997 Argonaut team? And of course, Kelly and Doug Flutie.
Yeah, gee, okay. You got to give me a chance to think about that, because it's not something I have really pondered, but it's a good question. I mean, when they're at 9-1, and those two Argo teams, 96 was great. 97 was even better.
Oh, yeah.
They were 15-3 both years. You know what the difference was in 97, a really terrific, fantastic Argo defense became a monstrously impossible to play against defense. and then you had Doug Flutie and Pinball and Robert Drummond and Paul Mazzotti and Mookie Mitt. Oh my God. I mean, it's hard for me to say that this Argo team is the same as that, because for my money, Doug Flutie's the greatest quarterback who ever played in the Canadian Football League, and 6 most outstanding player awards, I think, proves that. Kelly's got a ways to go before he can match what Flutie did on a field. And I think those teams, that 97 team in particular, was, I hate to say it, because this Argo team this year is stacked with talent. But I'd have to say, I don't know that I've ever seen an Argo team as stacked with talent as that 97 team. I'd have to go back to 83 perhaps and compare those two teams. But this has a chance, this group, to be one of the all-time great Argo teams if they keep this up. Obviously, if they lose, boy, if they go on to lose only 2 games, you could really make an argument. If they lose only 2 regular season games and win the Grey Cup, maybe they get the nod.
Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, even the Argos, the 97 team didn't have the win streak at the beginning of the year as this year's team did. So there's definitely some good cases for both sides. Moving on from Chad Kelly, the question I wanted to ask you about is, as you know, it's the 150th anniversary of the Argonauts, and I know Mike Hogan posted that article, and with you, Dr. James Fraser, Paul Woods, and equipment manager Danny Webb, you guys have worked to bring out the top 150 moments of the Argonauts history. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little about that and share some of your experience doing that.
Sure thing, Nick. I got to say, like, off the top, when Hoagie got in touch with me and said, we've got this little committee doing this and you want to be a part of it, I just felt privileged and honored to be a part of it. And it was a wonderful process. It was a hard process, but a really rewarding one with the guys that you mentioned, and with Hoagie chairing the committee. There was a lot of, we would meet over Zoom every week. And then at the very end of it, to finalize the list, I know the rest of the guys, those 4 met at a watering hole in nearby Toronto. I'm not exactly sure where it was, and I was on the phone, and that was a nice long meeting as well. But it went for weeks and weeks, constant meetings. Here's a portion of the list. Now we do the next portion of the list. Now we rejig this. Now we move this around. And what about this? And then when we got to 150 and had all of those in place, or we thought, we moved things around again. So it was a labor of love, and just, a real honor to be a part of that, and a difficult thing to do. It's funny, guys, because 150 moments, that's a lot, isn't it? We started out, some of us, I think, thinking, oh boy, it's gonna be thin pickings, once we get into 100, 110 or whatever. We got way past 150, and how do we leave this off? How do we leave that off? I joked to the guys, I said, you're gonna need a bigger boat just to put all these moments in. We got to go over 150, but we can't because it's the 150th anniversary. So we hope people are enjoying it. I can't remember where we are in the list. Do you guys know? I think we've gone 40 to 31
You went down to 31, I think, as the last update of it, I believe.
All right. Thank you, Nick. So that's where we're getting into, is the real, and we really sweated over the top 25, and we really super sweated over the top 10. I hope people are happy with the way that falls. But in the end, I kind of went, with some of these moments, it could land at 148. It could land at 73. And for some people, they'd go, hey, that's in my top 20. That's going to be a beautiful thing about this list. But I do think we got it. Obviously, I'm going to say this, right, guys? I think we got it right. I think the top 25 is going to look good to people. I think the top 10 is especially going to look good to people, but we'll see.
Yeah, as a history MA myself, I really appreciate that you guys have also dug into some of the older moments way back that even people who I've spoken to who are in their 50s or 60s don't even remember. Like I've been going to games the last 2 years wearing Joe Kroll and Royal Copeland jerseys in the modern jersey, but of Argo's legends, and it's like and people. just bringing back their old memories, coming up to me, telling them about Dick Shadow or Tobin Rote, guys like that. It's been so much fun, because I think what this whole 150 years have done is, whether you're talking about a very narrow, specific epic plays like the Rocket Ishmael and the beer can story, or the Devere Posey pass, but then going to sort of bigger events that them winning against Sarnia, I think 4-0, something like for the Grey Cup, stuff like that. Events that really, you can't think of it now as one big play, but that have just as much and sometimes more significance to the team's history than one little play, to really try to balance that all out. I think you guys have done a really great job, and I've been really happy that Dr. Fraser's been able to bring in a lot of those more kind of older historic points.
Yeah, can I talk a little bit more about that, Nick and Chris? And you mentioned James Fraser. It was amazing to learn so much about Argo history. Me at the age of 59, my memories are hazy about Theismann in the 71 Argos, but you get into the mid 70s, late 70s, then I really know my stuff from then on. And James, who has a Twitter account that people should follow called Bygone Boatman, is amazing. The store of knowledge that he has, the research that he's done. Like, he would bring us moments like, hey, did you know there was a fire at Center Island and some of the Argos actually got into boats and rowed over there to rescue people? I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? Are you kidding me with this? We got to have this on the list. So we would get things like that. And then things like you mentioned, like a 4-0 win over Sarnia, these long ago, maybe forgotten by so many people, moments that still are sterling moments in a 150-year history of a team, and we got him on the list because of him. I can't say enough about James Fraser and what he contributed to this list. Amazing.
Box the GOAT.
Yes. I said to him, hey, because he had written in an email, the box punt should go on there. And I said to him, what is a box punt? I've never heard of it. And he said, no, it's a person. And then he went on to explain to me just what that story meant. And went, oh, okay, now I get it. And, we are clearly in an area where, James outstrips all of us in knowledge. Again, he's just got an incredible amount of stuff in his brain and in his notes about the ancient Argos.
That historians do. If I had half the experience and wealth of knowledge as Dr. Fraser did, I would be happy.
You'll get there. You'll keep at it, right?
And thank you, Don.
You can do it in football. Curling's a good place to really dig into history too. I'm sure you've already done that and had some fun.
Yeah, a little bit.
Hey, Don, what I was going to say, I'm going to wrap it up at the top of the hour for you. But for me, I would say my 150th moments would have to be that 83 Argos team ending that 31-year drought. And they were not very good in the 70s and early 80s when I was growing up. And for me, that 83 team Grey Cup win, the 82 team was special. And my favorite all-time Argonaut, sorry, Pinball Clements, but it's still number 10, Terry Creer.
Oh, is it? Okay, if we're going around the tail, I can, you know what? I don't think the 83 team made it onto the list, Chris. So you're going to be, no, I'm just kidding.
You got me there.
For me, at Condredge Holloway, I don't know that anyone will ever outstrip him as my favorite Argo of all time. Again, it depends on when. I think Ken Dryden said it best. He was talking about hockey, but really all sports. He said, when he was asked, what's the golden era of hockey? And he said, it's whatever era was around when you were 14. That's, and that's true for everybody personally, isn't it? So for me, it's Holloway and yeah, the 83 team is going to be on there. I won't tell you exactly where, but that's not going to be a surprise to anybody that it would be in the top 30, right?
One thing I wanted to ask you, Don, I know you probably can't say it, but is there gonna be any news about the Argonauts? They did play in the 50s and 60s, a couple of NFL games against the Chicago Cardinals at a C&E Stadium.
What are you asking me? If that's in, or if those are on the list?
Yeah, if that would be, you think they would be included there too? The NFL matches head to head.
I don't think, unless I'm, I don't think I'm going to get into trouble by exposing a little bit of the list here, but I don't know. I don't think those were on there. I don't think we really thought about those exhibition games as super important. I don't remember them really coming up, to be honest with you, Chris. Maybe that's an oversight on our part. I don't know. Others can judge that, and you can judge it as well when you take a look at the list. But no, I don't recall those coming up. And again, we came up with probably, well, Paul Woods will tell you, I think he said he came up with almost twice as many moments as we needed, or another 100 or something.
Knowing Paul, I could see that.
Yeah. Nick, we never found out who your favorite Argo was of all time.
Oh man, that is a tough thing. For me as a kid growing up, I was always amazed by Noel Prefontaine.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just I've always loved kickers who have been able to put a long career, especially with one or two teams in his case. If I was younger, I probably would also have been a big fan of the late Andrew Shijan. Yeah, that's a mouthful to pronounce. But yeah, guys like that. I've always loved kickers growing up as a kid, and guys like that have been my favorite. The whole reason why I brought up the Toronto Sarnia game in the first place, though, is because everybody knows the '83 team and it being the 40th anniversary of them. I brought that up because that was the 1933 championship. It was 4-3. Not 4-0, I think, like I said before. But the final score, final crowd was 2,751. Compare that to yesterday, the Labor Day game. Yeah, yesterday, with 25,000 people sellout crowd in Hamilton. Football's come a long way since then.
Sure has, and it's been a great season, not just for the Argos, but I mean, there's some great stories in the CFL year over year over year, and we're having another one in 2023. It's great to watch.
Absolutely.
Hey, Don, I'm going to let you go because it's the top of the hour, but just want to quickly ask you, is there going to be a 150th Argos hard copy book come out as well?
I don't know. I'm not on the inside of that. I am not sure. That'd be a question for somebody within the organization. I know if there is, I wasn't a part of it. But so I'm just not sure. I know they've got festivities. I'm sure you guys know planned around that 150th game when they take on the Edmonton Elks. I think a couple of nights before there's going to be a big gala dinner. Lots of alumni will be in town for that. So I know there's some special things coming. And that's going to be a great, midweek to week, because I think that's a Friday night game, isn't it?
Yes.
So, yeah, midweek to Friday night, I think it's going to be, from what I understand, just chock full of really terrific celebrations that Argo fans are going to love.
And finally, Don, your favorite uniform. I always thought it was the '83 uniforms, but I have to admit this year's uniforms look very sharp.
I have always really dug powder blue, man. I mean, I love that, or officially Cambridge blue. But any kind of powder blue. My wife will tell you, I've got all of my shirts are powder blue, and it's been that way for years and years and years. I think this year's are pretty darn good, but I wouldn't put them up there with as great a uniform as the ones, again, because that's my golden era, right? So the 83, 82 Argos, the early 80s, those I think were the best uniforms they ever had. And I think the second best, in my opinion, to be honest, are the ones they had before they changed after the 2017 Grey Cup, or is it 2018? When did they change? The ones with the bold stripes on the sleeves, the ones they had from 2012 on until they went kind of plain before this current change. I think those ones looked really terrific too.
Yeah, it was a nice amount of striping, and I think it really epitomized the Ricky Ray era. The one thing I didn't like in that era was when they had that alternate that was the all white with the A on it. That was like one of the only ones I couldn't get behind.
All right, Don, well, we're going to let you go, but I like your picture with the Argo diva, Lori Bursay, and she's been a fan of the team since what, the 70s?
She is the most incredible football fan I know, and I mean that as no slight to anybody else, because I know a lot of sensational, heart pounding through the chest CFL fans, and God love them all. And even in that group, Lori Bursay stands alone. She's just one of a kind.
She's the queen.
She is.
Well, Don, I'm going to let you go. I could talk to you. We could talk to you for 3 or 4 hours, but I want to say thank you so much for giving us some time out of your day to come on the new Argo Bounce live audio show, and you have an open invite to come back on here again in the future.
Anytime. Thanks a lot, Chris and Nick. And Nick, let's podcast on some curling at some point too, buddy.
Sounds good, Don. If they do come out with a paper copy of that book, I'm getting it signed by all you guys. I would love a memento like that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to all the great mementos that they can have around this 150 when it comes around officially in October. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Don. And what's the
See you,
best place for people to find you on social media?
Well, I guess at CFL Landry is the place to go to find me on Twitter, and then you can link to other stuff at CFL.ca and the like.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Don, and we'll talk to you soon then.
Cheers, guys.
Take care.
You too. All right, Nick, thoughts on the special appearance by Don Landry tonight?
Was that cool or what? I mean, Don Landry is just such an icon of Toronto Argonauts history and knowledge, especially like he said from his golden era in the 80s going all the way up to today, and for it to go really full circle to be a reporter, a talk show host, to be PA announcer, to kind of do everything. Like the PA announcer role is like the dream job of every kid when they've gone to Argos games. And I'm sure if you talk to Adam Goss, the current PA announcer, it's the same thing. And then on road games, it's so much fun. Like I was having beers with him in the tailgate section, a tailgate lot before the game yesterday. So it's such a brotherhood and a camaraderie. And no matter what position you are, whether you're just a fan attending his first game, like some people who were there yesterday, or if you're Pinball Clemens, who's the GM and all that of the Argos, having done every executive role, everybody's friends and brothers and comrades and sisters, and just all for support of the league. And it's just such an amazing thing that you don't get in any other sport, which makes the CFL just so special.
My three favorite Argo PA announcers: Fred Locking from 1972 to 1988 at the Old Exhibition Stadium. And then obviously Don Landry. I really liked his time with the Argonauts. And Adam, I think, does a great job. He's always knows when to get the crowd into the games, and he has a distinct tone of voice as well.
Yeah, give a shout out to their spotters as well, the people who go under the radar. I don't know if I'd had the voice to be a public address announcer, but to do the job of the spotting, where you have to be the on the point guy to watch, really be into the game and watch and know, oh, this guy's got it, this guy made the tackle, number 23, so and so. To do all that off the top of your head is a tricky thing to do. So shout out to those guys as well.
All right, we're going to get back into the game from yesterday where the Argonauts won 41-28 over the Tiger Cats. Nick, I wanted to ask you this. Who are some of the Argonaut players who stood out in this game versus Hamilton specifically?
Yeah, I think first and foremost what really stood out, it might have only come down to just one play that was super memorable, but the AJ Ouellette pass definitely made him at the very top of my list as someone who he had 80 yards rushing on 12 carries, which is pretty solid, average 6.5 yards a carry. But that one TD pass really put it above on the edge offensively. I think if you look at some other guys, Curly Giddens was targeted quite a few times, 67 yards, 5 catches on 6 targets. Tavares Daniels got almost 60 yards, 3 catches on 7 targets. I think he was the guy who also had that catch that was challenged that he caught like right kind of foot on near the line that was ruled incomplete because he kind of bobbled it after it got challenged. Brissett and Coxie had a couple of big catches too. It was a good kind of well-rounded game for the receivers. And then if we go to the defensive side, Flo Rimalotti had a good game. I thought the linebacking core as a whole was solid. Jordan Williams, Sean Oakman, obviously Pickett up on that list. So you had really good defensive core games, and I got to shout out Jack Kassar for catching that one onside kick. That was pretty clutch in a key moment. So I'll shout out to him as well.
My only concern with the team is they don't play 60 minutes, and right now they can get away with it in the regular season. But when you're in the playoffs and it's a playoff situation, you got to put your foot to the gas pedal. And I find this team, they do get off to good starts, and then they have their laws and let teams hang around. They let the Tiger Cats hang around in that game yesterday until the fourth quarter. But one thing about the Argonauts, when they do face some adversity, they know when it's time to end the game. It would be nice to see them put together a full 60-minute game. And at halftime, I know Matthew Shinetti interviewed Ryan Dinwiddie, and even though the team was up 17-4, he was not happy, and he thought Kelly had a little too much tunnel vision, and even Chad admitted that he was trying for the home run balls. And it seemed like maybe the end of the third quarter, fourth quarter, they finally got that offense going again.
Yeah, I mean, you only had about 100 yards passing in INT, and to somehow be up 17-0 is, yeah, it's been weird with a lot of the Argonauts games where the stats themselves don't normally tell the whole picture of the story. The big thing, if we're shouting out another Argo player, Javon Leake, the big thing that has really set up Toronto really well in this game for the whole game was that they were in really good field position. They were starting, I don't think they started outside of their own 50-yard line for pretty much the entire game. It seemed like they always had position close to midfield, and you saw that on the way Hamilton was punting. There was a lot of kind of pooch punts that really didn't go more than 30 yards, and then taking no yards penalties on 3 of the returns in the first half. You're now basically negating, it's like a 10-yard punt net yards by the end of it. So, and there was one where they got a no yards and Javon Leake still returned the ball 40 yards down the field. So it was definitely a good special teams game as well, especially given that typically, like I said, Reinbold usually gets in the heads of the Argo special teams coordinators, but it didn't work out for Mickey Donovan that time. And yeah, but offensively, yeah, you look at it and Chad Kelly only threw 200 yards, 2 TDs and 2 interceptions, which really isn't like him. I think the 2 big factors that really affected this game more defensively probably than offensively was the heat and the humidity. A lot of guys were dropping down during games with cramps. Like I think Sean Oakman, Roberson Daniel, Deontay Knight, Jordan Williams, like at least half the defensive side, there were guys taking knees at certain points. And then the other big thing was the factor the wind played. I don't know how this game would have went if there was no wind at all, because it was already pretty bad, even with a stiff breeze. But the Argos scored all those 17 points with the wind, and then into the wind, they seemed to slow down offensively, and that kind of painted the picture in the second half that Hamilton really need to get going, and they did a little bit, but not enough to beat the Argos.
Okay, and we got a viewer, Ken Judge. Hey boys, great interview. Nick Small, we'll see you tomorrow night on Ken's Corner podcast. Nick, what time is that podcast tomorrow night for people to watch?
Yeah, thanks Ken for watching, and thanks for shouting us out. I'm really excited to announce if I'm going to be on Ken's show tomorrow. We're going to be on at 7:00 on Ken's Corner podcast, and yeah, we're gonna be talking a little bit more Toronto Argos. So if you aren't sick of hearing me here already, you'll get to hear us talk a little bit more tomorrow. I think we'll talk a little bit about the game there as well, but we're also going to break down a little bit more about the Toronto Argonauts history, with it being their 150th anniversary. So thanks Ken for watching, and thanks for commenting and for bringing attention to the podcast that I'm a part of tomorrow as well.
One thing I wanted to wrap it up with Javon Leake. I want to know who brought him into this organization, if it was Pinball Clements or John Murphy, because this kid is a special talent, and he's already broken the record for most punt returns for touchdowns in franchise history with 4. And every time he gets the ball, he's capable of a touchdown or a great play. And that really helps the Argonauts offense when you get, even if he doesn't get touchdowns, he sets them up at the 45, the 50, midfield, makes it a lot easier on the offense to move the ball and even get more points. And it's just another weapon this Argonaut team has.
Yeah, well, we saw kind of last year the departure of who was the returner last year, Chandler Worthy. It was kind of a bit of a shock because Toronto at that point didn't have a very good return game, and one of the things was Worthy's return was seemingly pretty good, and then he gets cut from Toronto, scooped up by Montreal. And in the early things, yeah, it did look like that they made a mistake because I think that very first game where they got either a couple big returns or he got a return TD, but did that, and we weren't looking too good return wise. But I got to give credit to Mickey Donovan. I think really the way the schemes have formed up over the last year, Toronto was a terrible special teams team the last couple of years, and they're finally getting it together. They're getting good blocking schemes in, and it's really allowing Javon Leake to use the explosiveness that they picked him up for to take advantage of those gaps and to run it down. So yeah, he's had an absolutely tremendous impact. And I think the only game so far since he's been in where he's had that negative impact was the Calgary game where kind of nothing went right. The one in Calgary, I should mention, not the one we hosted a couple weeks ago. That was the only kind of blip in the radar, but everything so far has been strong, and he's been proving it because he is hands down the best kick return in the league right now.
How much will the Argos miss Deshaun Amos? I guess he's on the 6-game list at least. And did Maurice Coronel even dress yesterday? I was under the impression he was going to possibly even play in that game.
No, he ended up not dressing. Let me bring up the Argos depth chart real quick because they did add a player from their practice roster. Amos, yeah, he was still in the in like the scooter with where you put your knee up and where you're in a cast. He had a full cast on and he had the boot on, so he was pretty well protected. I think given what I've seen on social media, I got to think Amos is probably out long term. The guy they had was Pierce, Mason Pierce. He came off from the practice roster and was on the squad for this game. And they had the interesting thing was they had Royce Mechie, who normally plays one of the cornerbacks or sometimes halfback positions. He moved into playing safety. And then you had McFadden and Daniel playing the two wide receivers, and then you had Stiggers and Peters who played on the corners. And I think there was still a little bit of question of whether Jamal Peters was 100%, but he made it work there with that INT he got. He sure didn't look out of shapes there with that because that was a big athletic catch. That wasn't like a terrible throw right to him. Peters really had to jump to make that catch, and that was just a great athletic play from him.
Okay. One thing I wanted to ask you, Nick, is I still have concerns about there's a couple areas I'm kind of concerned about. Obviously, the secondary, which I think if they get Amos healthy and even Cornell at some point, I think we'll be okay. The front four, the linebackers are solid. Hopefully, we get Enoch Manamba back at some point this year. It's still going to come down to the defense in the playoffs. Offense wins regular season games, sells tickets, but in the playoffs, you do need your defense at 100% if you want to get to the Grey Cup and win it.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about any of the linebacking core up. Yeah, the big question really lies in that DB segment, especially now that they lost Josh Haggerty again, and they Amos being gone, and yeah, it still didn't really look quite the DB core that we've been used to seeing over the all of last year and the first half of this year. I think they're going to probably have to make an acquisition at some point, and you're just kind of wondering, is it going to be an NFL guy that dropped out of camp? Is it going to be somebody from another team that got dropped, or are they going to a guy like Pierce moving up, seeing who else they've got? They've got Eric Sutton, Jamie Harry, left on their practice roster, Tigi Sanko as well, who's been on the game time roster as well. I think Sanko counts as a global player too. So with Haggerty being sort of the game time decision, seemingly holding the ball, but not punting right now, do you potentially risk having him sit a game and put him in Patenko in as a global player. There's some things you can do, but yeah, I think they need just from a depth point as well. Especially we saw that this week with it being so inexplicably hot in the GTA this week. If it's like this again Friday in Montreal, you might have to just to keep guys rested and rotating through. It's sometimes you get in these situations, especially defensively, where you're rotating guys in more just because guys just can't play full plays with this kind of heat going on. If it's still going to be like this come Friday.
Oh yeah, it's Saturday.
Saturday.
Oh yeah, I was wondering, did they move the game up to Friday?
Yeah, no, I got the date wrong. It's on me.
Okay, Saturday, and this is a short turnaround. So this will show you how important depth is. This turnaround is less than 6 days, and that's why it's important to have good depth. And what I liked about the Argos too, when they need to run the ball in the second half, they did it. And also, I still think Andrew Harris has some gas left in the tank, and it was nice to see him get a touchdown. And of course, AJ, I want to ask the Argos, the coaching staff, who came up with that call to make that play to OJ. Was it to Coxie? Was the touchdown to Coxie or Daniels? Or Brissett.
Yeah, it was Brissett because he made the big jumping catch. Yeah, I don't know. I thought Ben put it pretty well on his show yesterday about just that a lot of times you put those plays in and you got to wait for very niche circumstances to use it. And it just says a lot in sort of that they're getting the situations that they've planned for in games where they have an opportunity to catch guys sleeping. And you saw that as well with the flea flicker. What's been so effective is just because the running game has been so dominant, guys are cheating in when they think the ball's handed off. And you don't just see it on the dive too. You saw it on both the jet sweeps to Curly Gins as well. Guys are buying the hard running plays to OLED, and then they're able to take advantage of that to do those kind of fakes, whether it's a flea flick or a running back pass, the receivers coming around or an end around type play. You're seeing Brendan Calver line up on packages and the tight end spots too. So I wonder if maybe we'll see a tight end around him too. There's lots of possibilities there, and that's what having an effective running game does. It doesn't just sell the play action where you fake hand it off and then you throw the bomb down the field. It's allowing for all these different kinds of unique plays, and in the CFL especially, you're able to do that more with being able to move more guys around prior to the snap. That's what makes the CFL so great.
Okay, Nick, we're going to wrap this show up in a few minutes, but I want to get to the next segment. And this is our Argos 3 stars of the game against Hamilton. If you don't mind, I'm going to go first this week.
Of course.
I'm going to go with Coxie, number 1. And then the number 2 star, I'm going to give the offensive line. I don't think I have, or other people have given them enough credit. I think they played a great game against Hamilton, protected Kelly. So Coxie 1, the entire O-line number 2, and of course the number 3 star, I'm going to go with the tank, AJ Ouellette. Yeah,
to try to not pick on those guys and be different, I really do appreciate the O-line, like you said, the fact that they got a sack-free game is all in itself always a big accomplishment, and they never really looked like they were in a bad situation for most of the game.
No.
I think I'm going to pick a different receiver. I thought Curly Ginn had a really solid game. It wasn't maybe an all-star level game, but it was definitely a solid performance out of him, and him getting kind of fired back up and getting good medium yard plays out of him is huge, right? If I had to pick someone defensively, I think I would pick actually Flo Remalade. I thought he did really well generating pressure and as well that most of the D-line, because it was a big team effort for that game because everybody on the D-line was in just with how hot it was. But I thought Flo played the best, although Dwayne Hendricks played well. Robbie Smith was good as well. Oakman, when he wasn't hurt, was doing well as well. So, but I'll pick Flo. And then I think I'm to give one out on our return ace, Leak with that big sets of returns. He's getting into their heads when they're willing to take no yards, and rather than giving up the big return and kicking away from him. It's just putting the Argonauts field position every game, and often that's the factor that wins games. If you're starting from within your own 20 versus within your own your 50, it makes a tremendous difference in games. That's 30 yards less you have to travel now down the field, and it's a long way.
All right, and since we're wrapping up the show, Nick, just quick thoughts on the upcoming game this Saturday at 1 o'clock at BMO Field. You can get tickets at Argonauts.ca this Saturday at 1 o'clock against the 6-5 Montreal Alouettes.
Yeah, well, contrary to all my gaps and misinformation feeding, I'm blaming the heat on this because it's also hot here where I am in Mississauga, so I'm for that. Yeah, it's going to be an awesome afternoon game. Everybody's been wanting one, so we're finally getting it. So hopefully everybody shows up to that game. I'm hoping we'll see a lot of families come down, kids maybe who were at the CNE game or maybe missed out on the CNE game because they thought it was a little too late of a start. Hopefully they get the opportunity to go to this game. I think the Argos are going to still go full out in this game against Montreal. They're up 6 points, I believe, and they still have 2 games in hand. And if this game, they're with the 8-point gap, they're going to be in a huge position to clinch the playoffs already and probably clinch home field. It's definitely a different picture if they lose this game and have to go into Montreal down some guys. So I'm expecting them to go all out for the win here, and they've played extremely well at home. So they've played extremely well at home. So if you haven't had a chance to go to a game, you need to see them at BMO because for whatever reason, Chad brings it to a next level there.
Yeah, I just my only concern, it is a short weekend. It's a short week. It's hard. These guys are football players. They'll go out and play, but it's a short week. And with them running away with the CFL East, I just have a feeling this might be a closer game than people think. I think the Argos can pull it out, but I do not believe it's going to be a blowout. So we'll see. Hey, Nick, before we wrap this up, what's the injury report look like? Anybody nicked up yesterday we need to be concerned about for this Saturday's game?
I don't think there's anything long that I know of at this time that's sort of long term. It seems like a lot of it was mostly like dealing with heat stress, cramping, stuff like that, rather than any like major injuries. I think a good thing to consider is that it's hot today, which they have today off, the Tuesday. Wednesday is going to be hot again. Thursday, it's not going to be until the evening where the humidity and heat breaks here. Like if you're not in the GTA right now, it's like around 40 degrees Celsius right now with humidity, like close to 100 Fahrenheit. It's really bad right now. So you got to think that's probably factoring into practice. You're either practicing indoors now or you're doing less strenuous activities that you would normally be doing. Friday's the walkthrough and Saturday's the game. And by then it will have cooled down. At least that's what we're being told. So it does put the Argos at an advantage. In a short week, you're already kind of having to take practice lighter now. And yeah, we'll just have to see if some of those guys who are dealing with cramping issues, are we going to still see them play, or are they going to take a risk and give guys who are just showing minimal signs of stress, give them an extra day to rest, kind of like the Chad Kelly scenario where he didn't go in unless he was 100%, and then got pulled from the Calgary game for what seemed to be minor injuries. Do you have guys sit out that Montreal game? We might see that. We might not. It's way too early to tell though this week, unfortunately. But yeah, it's going to make an interesting game story for Saturday.
I believe the Grey Cup will be there, and I believe it's the Pure Later Food Bank Challenge too as well this Saturday in Toronto.
Yeah, so if you get a chance, Chris Schultz, it is his legacy. One of his biggest things he did was the Purolator Tackle Hunger Drive, and it's 20th anniversary now this year. So yeah, if you get a chance, go and donate some food. You can bring some money if you don't want to carry a grocery bag of food with you. It's all going to good cause, to Toronto food banks, and you get your photo taken with the Grey Cup, which is really cool. So if you get the opportunity, I highly encourage you to go down. It's usually in the north gates, the ones that's closest when you get off at the GO train station. So you don't have to travel that far. If you're for like car, it's a different story, but if you're going by train, it's going to be right there. So the opportunity, and yeah, be there, go down to any of the Liberty Village pubs and pregame a little bit, or come on down to the tailgate. We'll all be there, and it's always a lot of fun to celebrate. So it'll be a great game. Montreal is a fun group of fans to watch a game with. So it'll be a fun time.
All right, and finally, Nick, before we wrap up episode 8 of the Argo Bounce live audio show, CFL picks of the week. I'm going to let you go first here with the games.
Yeah, let me just bring it up. I had it up earlier and I closed it. So for this week, Hamilton in Ottawa. I will go Ottawa, just from home field advantage standpoint. Toronto and Montreal, I will take the good guys again. I mean, they're 9-1, so even if it's kind of questionable, still roll with the hot hand. Score wise, I'm still gonna say they'll break their scoring average. I'm gonna say something around 35-30. The rematch, I think Winnipeg's gonna win the rematch at home against Saskatchewan, and then rematch in Edmonton. If Chris Jones doesn't screw up the defense and cost Trey Ford another win, I will pick Edmonton over home.
All right, I'm going to go with Hamilton because they've owned Ottawa this year 2-0. I think Hamilton's going to win this game against Ottawa. I think Ottawa is the write-off for this year. That's my take on it. So I got Hamilton winning that game. I've got the Argonauts winning, but I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be less than 7-point differential. I do think the Argos will get it done. I'm going to say 33-27 over the Alouettes. And then Winnipeg, I think, is going to be pissed off when they get home, and I think they'll beat Saskatchewan. And Calgary and Edmonton, I think the Elks are going to rebound and get their third win of the season and their second consecutive home win.
Yep, sounds good. Okay.
Well, Nick, I want to say thank you to Don Landry for coming on episode 8 today here on this, Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. And Nick, I want to say thank you for coming on the Argo Bounce live audio show again as a co-host, and looking forward to the game against the Montreal Alouettes this Saturday at 1 o'clock at BMO Field. If you can't get down to the game, you can watch it on TSN or TSN 1050 on the radio with Mike Hogan and Ben Grant.
Yep. Thanks again, Chris. Huge shout out to Don Landry. Thank you very much. It was such an amazing conversation the three of us had. And I'm looking forward to being on Ken's Corners podcast tomorrow. So if you get a chance, you can come see me there. Otherwise, you'll see Chris and I sometime next week after the Montreal game. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Nick. Have a good night and go Argos. Everybody, I want to say thank you so much again for watching and listening to episode 8 of the Argo Bounce live audio show on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter/X, and also our audio platforms such as Apple, Google, Spotify. And also thank you to everyone listening to this on WQEE 99.1 FM in Metro Atlanta, the home of Southern Talk and Sports. Hope you all have a great evening, and we'll see you next week for episode 9 of the Argo Bounce live audio show with Nick Small and Chris Pomay. Go Argos!
Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go! Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go! Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe! Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together